Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. 3 post-fight reviews in this video. We'll start with Christian Thun. This was a major upset, losing a points decision, majority decision to Curtis Harper. And that's the same Curtis Harper who famously a few years ago walked out of the ring after 1 second when he was facing F.A. Ajagba. The other 2 fights were on the Derek Chisora undercard. You had Solomon Dacres in against Kevin Espindola, the Argentine, and also Fabio Wardley. Disappointingly, there was a change of opponent late on, facing Chris Harper. So we'll cover that last because it's the least interesting. But Christian Thun, this was a major upset. Heading into this, he was unbeaten. It was a co-main event with Curtis Harper. He was expected to win and win well, considering Harper was only confirmed at, a week or 10 days notice. Christian Thun, in his last fight out, just really blitzed and beat up Amron Sands, got him out of there in a round. This one was a bit different. Curtis Harper came to fight, and you knew that from the first couple of rounds, which were probably more even and action-packed than I was expecting. You actually had Curtis Harper letting his hands go, and he caught Christian Thun a few times. And I think those first 2 rounds, they're kind of pick-em rounds. It was, certainly quite even with the action, but there were signs of what was to come because Thun was taking a few shots. The odd right hand, the odd jab was slipping through, rocking his head back. Wasn't a lot of head movement, and it really turned pear-shaped for him in round 3. A looping overhand right absolutely decimates him, and he's dropped to the canvas. He's hurt, and hurt badly, but what happens next, you wouldn't even think you could sort of write this as a comedy gag, but Curtis Harper, after dropping him, his mouthpiece falls out. So this buys Thun some valuable time to recover because he'd followed up and hurt him again after the knockdown. The mouthpiece comes out, and then it happened again another sort of 30 seconds later, and Thun had valuable time to recover. If his mouthpiece for Harper had have stayed in, he may have well got him out of there because Thun went down hard, and yeah, he was ripe for that shot. Harper took advantage. And it was kind of from this point onwards, Thun never really looked in the fight. And he just couldn't seem to use the tools that he's got, the height, the reach. Remembering he's 6'8". His corner, round after round, was imploring him, keep it long. Use your height, use your reach, throw the jab, the 1-2. Don't get involved, don't mix it up on the inside. But Thun couldn't help it. He'd keep it long for a little bit, and then he'd get involved in a tear-up on the inside and invariably come off second best. And numerous other points in this fight where Christian Thun was hit with shots and he looked hurt and buzzed at times. Little glassy-eyed, and Curtis Harper, for me, was winning a lot of these rounds. The one round, ironically, that I thought Thun really started to come back into it was round 7, and this was an 8-round fight. But then he was deducted a point in that same round, so it went from bad to worse. So he was deducted a point for holding. So the referee had told him to let go. He didn't, and then the referee said, okay, a point gone. So it was a comedy of errors to some extent. The whole mouth guard thing earlier in the fight, then the point deducted. Christian Thun just couldn't catch a break. And the scorecards, bearing in mind he's the house fighter here, so 75-75, which I think is egregious. I think Curtis Harper clearly won this fight. There was one card 78-72 and one card 76-73. And actually, because this was a pro box card, Thun being the house fighter, you had the commentators, Roy Jones Jr. and Antonio Taba, expressing surprise that Thun wasn't closer on those cards. And I actually think that there was no case for Christian Thun winning that fight. He never really recovered from that knockdown in the 3rd round. He couldn't follow instructions, and he wasn't moving his head. The defense wasn't great, and he kept getting caught with the same shot. Just couldn't keep his left hand up, couldn't get out of the way, couldn't move his head, couldn't make an adjustment. He didn't deserve to win, and I'm glad that at least 2 of the 3 referees got it right. So what next for Christian Thun? Because this is a major dent for him. He'd been looking increasingly good in recent fights, remembering he's a prospect under 10 fights. I think he was 8-0 heading into this one. He was building, but this really has upset the apple cart. And if you're going life and death with Curtis Harper, you really have to look at what's happening and where you're going. I mean, I think they need to probably run this back, have a rematch. Christian Thun probably needs to, work on his defense and use the height and the reach, as his corner was so often imploring him to do. So a big upset. It was a big upset. The other couple of fights, you had Kevin Espindola versus Solomon Dacres. Dacres, the matchroom fighter, he'd had 3 fights heading into this one. Been out for basically a year because of a shoulder injury. He's rehabbed it. He's back. He looked pretty decent. It was a workmanlike effort. If you saw Kevin Espindola versus Ivan Deutschko just a couple of weeks ago, you kind of knew that this guy was going to be tough and durable, and you knew pretty much what to expect, that he'd fight in bursts. There was a little bit of activity, but for the most part, he was covering up, he was taking shots, and you had Solomon Dakers unable to really put a dent in him, but winning all of the rounds. And it kind of became a bit samey after a while, but for a guy who'd been out a year, he needed some activity, needed some rounds. This was the perfect opponent. And I think because this was off TV, this was on the YouTube section before the bell, and that's where you can find that fight. If you're outside of the UK, you'll need a VPN. But it allows him to come back, get the activity, and he can keep developing, move on to the next one. Because I ironically think this would have been a much better opponent for Fabio Wardley, who I think actually needs some guys, some opponents who are durable, can give him some rounds, give him some work, and he can show what he's been working on in the gym, because they were only able, and this is where we're moving on to the Fabio Wardley fight, get Chris Healy. He had been due to face Kingsley eBay, and even eBay wasn't the first choice opponent. There were some others apparently in recent weeks. They just haven't been able to nail an opponent down. eBay was refused entry into the United Kingdom for whatever reason, and the fight doesn't go ahead. So you have Wardley blasting out Chris Healy inside a couple of rounds. It was what it was. At least he got back in the ring, got some activity. He gets the payday, he gets a little bit of value out of the camp, but it's not really good enough, is it? At this point, Wardley needs to be stepping through minor incremental steps, and that's why Kingsley eBay was actually going to be a decent fight, because he is durable. He took Jared Anderson a number of rounds and, was a live dog, throwing some punches back at Anderson, and that's the sort of thing that Wardley needs. Not, faded journeymen like Daniel Martz who don't, have a little bit of effort and then give up. Wardley needs some tests and some opportunities. They keep talking, and this is Wardley included, also Eddie Hearn and others, about Wardley potentially for the British title later this year. He currently holds the English title, but everyone seems to keep forgetting Joe Joyce has the British title. I haven't heard Joyce or Frank Warren talk about dropping that. And are they going to be voluntarily dropping it so Wardley can face someone like Nathan Gorman for it? Thing is, I'm not hearing Fabio Wardley calling out Joe Joyce, the holder of the title. Basically, he's saying he wants to fight someone else for it. So he's not probably ready for a guy like Joyce, but obviously it's being held by someone else at the moment. I don't know why people keep banging on like this is some sort of, title that's vacant and can be fought for. Joyce probably going to drop it at some point, but I don't think Frank Warren's going to be, as Joyce's promoter, trying to do any other promoters any favors and to get some glean and shine from a belt that one of his fighters currently holds. I mean, there is more stock in fighting for the British title than the English one that Wardley holds. It's just is what it is. It's a title with a bit more prestige, and he wants to fight for it. Even the talk of facing Nathan Gorman, I'm not sure that's going to happen. It has been ordered for the English title, but again, I'm not sure it's going to happen. Remembering Nathan Gorman is now with Wasserman, I'm not sure how much business they're going to be doing with Matchroom at this point. They seem to be doing their own shows on Channel 5. They've got a new deal there, and also they're working with Sky. There have been a number of fighters going over from Sky to Wasserman cards, and this seems to be a new arrangement. So anyway, Wardley gets a win. Unclear what next. Hopefully much better than Chris Healy. Solomon Dacres back from injury. Still a question about how much power and pop he's got on his punches. And then you had Christian Thun getting upset by Curtis Harper, who was a deserved winner in my book. But what do you make of it all? Drop a comment, loud and often, hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.